Welcome back. Sounds of INXS. Well, why biscuits, frozen pizza and margarine staples in households across the nation? A new warning has deemed them unsafe to eat. The common ingredient, well, artificial trans fat. It's now been banned in the United States.
That's right. The US Food and Drug Administration has ruled that artificial trans fat must be removed from all food within 3 years. But will Australia follow suit? Well, joining us with more is General Practitioner Dr. Brad McKay. Dr. Brad, we mentioned some of the foods there that contain trans fat, but what is it exactly?
Yeah, trans fat is a fat that's added to food to make it last a little bit longer on the shelf, to make it look a little bit more pretty for longer, and to make it taste a little bit better as well. So we've been using it since about the 1950s in food. It's basically created from bubbling hydrogen gas through vegetable oil, which then makes it solid at room temperature. So it sounds beautiful. Yeah.
It's not a pretty picture you're painting of the stuff, and they've banned it in the States to try and reduce heart disease. How dangerous is this stuff?
Yeah, so we've known that it's been pretty bad for a while, since about the 90s, but we've been trying to slowly phase it out of our foods, both in Australia and also America. What we've found is that by doing a 3-year study that's been done in the States, they've just come out with the results now, saying that it's terrible, it's overwhelmingly bad, there's no nutritional benefit from having trans fats, and it's causing heart disease and stroke. So what it does is it increases your bad fat, so your LDL cholesterol starts to rise, and then your good fat that normally cleans up your arteries, your HDL cholesterol, that starts to drop down as well. So it's a double whammy.
I'm feeling sick just listening to you.
Yeah, exactly. So trans fats too, are they the type of fats that at room temperature are solid, as opposed to things like olive oil, which are liquid at room temperature? Is that right?
So if you're trying to plump up a donut and keep it perky for a long time, rather than it dripping the oil down and onto the mat or onto the ground below, then you're wanting to have a trans fat to keep that oil within the donut, so it keeps its shape, keeps its texture.
Do you think that this is something that we will see rolled out here in Australia, the banning of trans fats?
Yeah, well, at the moment in Australia, we have been phasing it out. We're better here than what we are in the States, but we've still got trans fat in our diet. And the thing in Australia is that it's not mandatory to report what trans fats are in our food. So if we're looking at labels in the supermarket, yeah, you don't have to put it on if you're a company. So it's quite difficult to have an informed choice about what you're eating.
I mentioned a couple of items in the intro, but just run through some of the foods that contain a lot of this trans fat.
The things we should avoid.
Yeah, so a lot of processed food, so that's like donuts and cakes. But biscuits as well, yeah. A lot of the food's on the cheaper spectrum too, because it's a very cheap oil. So yeah, if you're tending to buy the cheaper option, yeah, you're probably going to get it a little bit more in your diet.
What about
it's also in Lamingtons, yeah, probably in those as well, to a certain degree.
What about alcohol? Just checking.
Alcohol doesn't contain any trans fats as far as I'm aware. I think it would be floating on the top.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not just your heart that's at risk, is it? Because new research says that trans fat also affects your mood.
Yeah, there was a recent study coming out of San Diego recently. So it showed they tested about 5,000 people from a psychological perspective and looked at people that had a lot of trans fats in their diet. And they found that they were more likely to have depressed moods, to be a little bit more unstable with their mood as well, and to not really be aware or not being in tune with their own mood too. But then it's like, well, if you're feeling a little bit crappy that day, do you reach for the donut, or does the donut make you feel crappy? So yeah, they'll still be looking at that over time. But
it's not a big rap for your artificial trans fat.
Not really, no.
So if it makes you feel terrible, makes you more depressed,
and is likely to kill you.
Yeah, but if it's not the mood stuff, if it's going to kill you, probably not a good idea to have it in your diet.
Can I ask too, just in terms of fast food, the fast food outlets out there, would they be using trans fat?
Yeah, so we've been phasing it out in the bigger fast food outlets. So all of the big players, so McDonald's, KFC, etc. They've sort of been taking it out of their vats. But if you've got a small fast food joint, then they may still be using trans fats to fry up your fish or to fry up burgers or whatever they're doing.
Possibly for not much longer.
Well, hopefully not for much longer. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do.
So is it an appropriate question to ask our friendly neighbourhood fish and chip shop, for example, do you use artificial trans fat?
Yeah, I think it's suitable to do that. Yeah, and I think if they're trying to cut the bottom line, but then having something in their food that's poisonous, essentially, that can attribute to vast amounts of heart disease around Australia and around the world, yeah, if we had a choice, we'd rather use something that's a little bit better.
Absolutely.
That is great advice, and we thank you for giving it to us today.
Thank you, Dr. Brad. Don't go anywhere. There is still plenty more of Mornings still to come right after this.